Hi, my name is Clara. I'm 27 years old. People see my smile and think I've always had it together, but behind it was a battle I fought in silence, even with my own family. One night at dinner, my dad looked straight at me and said, "Give your room to your sister or get out." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just nodded, went upstairs, and quietly packed my bags. For a while, I slept on friends' couches, worked late shifts, and saved every dollar I could. My family didn't check in, not once. But a year later, they did see me again. Because that was the day I moved into the $5.2 million house they once dreamed of owning. As the moving trucks rolled up, they stood across the street speechless. I just smiled, waved, and said, "Don't worry, Dad. I found a room my own." Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Like this video and subscribe, because the next story I share will remind you sometimes silence is the best revenge. The table was quiet, but not peaceful. The only sounds were the clinking of silverware and the fake laughter my parents gave every time my sister Amber said something useless. The smell of roasted chicken filled the room, but I couldn't taste a thing. Dad sat at the head of the table, scrolling through his phone, pretending to listen to everyone. Mom poured herself another glass of wine, her red lipstick leaving marks on the rim. Amber sat across from me, talking about her new internship at a fashion firm. She said it like she'd just been crowned queen of the world. I stayed silent, cutting my food into tiny pieces, pretending not to notice their looks. I'd learned long ago that in this house, silence was safer than speaking. Then Dad set his fork down. His tone changed cold, sharp, final. "Is greater than Clara, give your room to your sister. Or get out." For a second, I thought I misheard him. The clock ticked once, twice. My knife slipped from my hand. "Is greater than what?" He didn't even look up. "Amber needs more space for her things. You're always out anyway. It's better this way." Amber's lips curved into that familiar smirk. Mom didn't even blink. She just muttered, "It's for the best, dear. You've had that room long enough." I looked around the table. Not one pair of eyes had any kindness left in them. My chest felt heavy, but my voice came out calm. "Is greater than okay?" That one word made Amber's smile falter for a second. Maybe she expected me to beg. I didn't. I finished the little food on my plate, stood up, and walked to my room. The same room I'd grown up in. The one with the posters I'd kept since I was 15, the books I'd bought with my first paycheck, and the window that caught every sunset. I pulled out a suitcase and started packing. Slowly, neatly, without a sound. No shouting, no tears, just the sound of hangers clicking and zippers closing. Outside my door, I could hear them laughing again. Amber was probably already planning how to redecorate. When I finally zipped the last bag, I stood there for a moment, staring at the empty bed. I whispered to myself, "Is greater than, you'll regret this." It wasn't a wish, it was a promise. I carried my bags downstairs. No one offered to help. Dad sat on the couch, eyes glued to the TV. Mom didn't even glance up. Amber leaned against the doorway, her arms crossed, smiling. "Is greater than need a ride?" she said sweetly. "No," I replied. "You'll need one before I do." Then I walked out of that house and didn't look back. The night air was cold, but it felt cleaner than anything I'd breathed in years. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew what I was leaving behind, people who never saw my worth. And as the door shut behind me, something inside me hardened. They thought they'd thrown me out. But really, they'd just set me free. The first few nights were the hardest. I slept in a small room above a bakery, where the smell of fresh bread mixed with the dampness of old walls. The mattress was thin, the ceiling low, and every time it rained, water slipped through the window frame. Still, I told myself, it's mine. I found work cleaning offices during the day. It wasn't much, just sweeping floors, wiping desks, and emptying trash bins while people in suits walked past me like I was invisible. But every time I held the mop, I reminded myself that it was just temporary. At night, I worked on my laptop designing logos, flyers, anything people were willing to pay for. Most days, I barely slept. Coffee replaced meals, but I didn't complain. I didn't post my struggles online. I didn't tell anyone. Meanwhile, my sister, Amber, posted photos from my old room newly painted pink, filled with plants and mirrors. Her caption read, "Is greater than finally got the space I deserve, number blessed." I scrolled past it without reacting. Let her have her moment. She had no idea what I was building in silence. Weeks later, on a rainy evening, I met Mr. Lewis. He was an older man who lived next to the bakery. I used to help carry his groceries sometimes. One day, he saw me working on my laptop in the bakery's corner and asked what I was doing. When I told him I was a graphic designer trying to make a living, he gave a slow nod. "Is greater than, you remind me of myself when I started," he said. "Tired?" I asked. "No, ignored," he replied. He used to own a marketing firm before retiring. Out of kindness or curiosity, he began visiting me every few days, sharing advice on how to find real clients, how to charge properly, how to present myself like a professional even when I had nothing. At first, I didn't believe him. But then one of his contacts hired me for a small project. I poured everything I had into it. The client loved my work and recommended me to others. Slowly, the orders began to grow. I upgraded my laptop, repainted my tiny room, and started sleeping again a little. Mr. Lewis became the first person who saw my worth without conditions. He never asked about my family. But one evening, he said quietly, "Is greater than people who push you out usually do you a favor? You'll see." Those words stayed with me. A month later, I received my biggest project yet, designing for a tech startup. I worked nights straight, barely leaving my chair. When they paid me, it was more than my father had ever given me in my life. I sent half to savings, half to business investment. That night, I looked at my reflection in the dark bakery window. My face looked tired but alive. My eyes didn't carry pain anymore, just purpose. For the first time, I wasn't trying to prove them wrong. I was proving myself right. Still, deep inside there was a quiet voice whispering, "Is greater than, they think you're still nothing." And for now, I wanted it that way. The days started blending into each other: work, design, learn, repeat. I stopped counting time by weeks and started counting by projects. Every morning, the bakery owner, Mrs. Patel, would hand me a cup of coffee on credit, saying, "Is greater than, you'll pay when you're rich, Clara." We'd both laugh, but deep down, I knew I would. My clients doubled, then tripled. I stopped cleaning offices and focused fully on design. I built a small online agency, Clara B Designs. I designed websites, logos, and full branding for small businesses. The more I worked, the more people talked about me. I bought better tools, a faster laptop, a new phone. Nothing fancy, just enough to keep me moving faster than the person I was yesterday. Mr. Lewis dropped by often. He'd sit across from me in the bakery with his black coffee, reading my reports and correcting my mistakes. He was strict but fair. "Is greater than, your work speaks louder than your pain," he said once. "Keep it that way." By then, I had 5 freelancers working under me, people from different countries, all connected by the same hunger to grow. My clients expanded overseas. And yet, not once did I tell my family. They hadn't called, not once, not even to check if I was alive. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I looked up Amber's profile. Photos of her on vacation, new clothes, a caption, "Is greater than life's good when you're the favorite." I almost laughed. Because I knew something she didn't, our father's company was sinking. I'd seen it online through a business forum. Debt, lawsuits, the kind of trouble he could never admit publicly. It felt strange, watching the same man who threw me out, now standing on shaky ground. But I didn't feel pity, only distance. My focus stayed sharp. Mr. Lewis suggested turning my small agency into a registered company. He even offered to invest. I hesitated, but he looked at me and said, "Is greater than, you've built something rare, strength without noise. Let's make it official." And just like that, Bennett Creative Studio Limited was born. In less than a year, my company had clients across 3 countries. I hired a manager, rented a proper office space, and moved out of the bakery room. The night I left, Mrs. Patel hugged me tight and said, "Is greater than, don't forget the smell of struggle, my dear. It keeps you humble." I smiled. Is greater than I'll never forget. My new apartment overlooked the city, tall glass windows, quiet, peaceful. But every time I looked out, I remembered that cold dinner table, those cruel words. One evening, I received a message from my lawyer. A property had just been listed, a mansion in Wellington Heights. The same house my parents used to drive by every Sunday, dreaming about how perfect it would be for them one day. I stared at the pictures for a long time. Then, without hesitation, I said, "Is greater than I'll take it." The paperwork began immediately. No emotion, no hesitation, no revenge speech, just calm, quiet action. And as I signed the final document, my hands didn't shake, my voice didn't crack. All I thought was, "Is greater than you told me to get out." I did, and look where it led me. The day I moved into the mansion, the air smelled like rain and new beginnings. The marble floors shone, the tall glass doors reflected sunlight, and every sound echoed softly through the empty halls. It didn't feel like a dream. It felt like justice, slow, silent, and precise. The house sat on a hill, overlooking the same city where I once cleaned offices and lived above a bakery. From the balcony, I could see the skyline, and somewhere down there was the house I'd been thrown out of. I didn't plan to tell them, but small towns love gossip. By the next week, everyone knew the new owner of the Wellington estate was Clara Bennett. I heard from an old neighbor that my parents were shocked. They had apparently told people it was impossible. "She's not capable of that," Dad had said. "She probably married someone rich." Typical. They could never imagine I built something without them. A few days later, they came to see for themselves. I was on the front steps, instructing movers where to place the last few boxes. Their car pulled up, glossy but aged just like the people inside it. Mum stepped out first, wearing her old pearls. Amber followed, dressed like she was attending an event. Then Dad. He looked smaller than I remembered. "Is greater than Clara?" he said, his voice unsure. "That's me," I replied, not smiling. Amber's eyes darted around the mansion. "This house? It's yours?" "Is greater than it is." Mum gave a nervous laugh. "You're joking, right?" "How could you afford?" "Is greater than work." I cut in. "The thing you said I wasn't good at." Dad's face tightened. "You didn't even say goodbye when you left." "Is greater than you didn't say good luck," I answered. The silence that followed stretched painfully long. Only the wind moved, stirring the trees near the gate. Amber tried to lighten the mood. "Well, it looks like you did." "Well, for yourself," she said, glancing around. "Is greater than better than expected," I said. "You should see the room upstairs. It's about the size of my old one." She froze at the hint. She knew what I meant. Mum shifted uncomfortably. "We were worried about you, dear," she said softly. "Is greater than were you?" I tilted my head slightly. Funny, I never noticed. Dad looked at me, his voice lowering. "You don't have to be rude." "Is greater than I'm not?" I said simply. "Just honest." They looked around again, uneasy, realizing that the daughter they once dismissed now owned everything they ever wanted. Amber tried again, this time forcing a smile. "So, do you live here alone?" "Is greater than yes," I replied. "It's peaceful that way." Their faces dropped. They weren't just surprised, they were uncomfortable. For the first time, they had nothing to say, no control, no higher ground. Mr. Lewis arrived, then I introduced him as my business partner. The look on my father's face said it all. Disbelief, pride swallowed, ego cracked. When they finally left, Dad muttered, "Take care, Clara." "Is greater than I already do," I replied. I watched them drive away, their car disappearing down the long road. Inside, the house was quiet again, empty, but not lonely. Every step I took echoed with a calm sense of satisfaction. They thought silence was weakness. Now, it was the sound of their defeat. The house was finally quiet. No footsteps, no laughter, no voices pretending to care. Just silence, the kind that filled every corner like peace and victory blended together. I stood by the tall glass window of the living room, holding a cup of tea. Outside, the city lights twinkled in the distance. From up here, Everything looked small, almost harmless. That visit from my parents stayed in my head for days. Not because of what they said, but because of what they didn't. No apology. No regret. Only surprise that I'd done well without them. They didn't understand that when they threw me out, they didn't end my story, they started it. I walked through the house, my footsteps soft on the marble. Every room echoed differently. The walls still smelled of fresh paint, and the air still carried that faint newness like the beginning of something long overdue. In the study, a photo sat on the desk, me and Mr. Lewis at my company's launch event. He was smiling proudly. He'd taught me more about strength than my family ever did. His words came back to me. Is greater than, people who push you out usually do you a favor. He was right. If they hadn't pushed me, I'd still be sitting at that dinner table, begging for crumbs of respect. Now I owned the table and the whole house around it. I looked out at the driveway where their car had parked just days ago. I remembered my father's face, pale and uncertain, my mother's forced smile, Amber's silence for once in her life. Revenge didn't need shouting. It didn't need chaos. It was standing there in calm success while those who doubted you saw what they threw away. Later that evening, I walked to the balcony. The wind carried the faint scent of rain again, just like the night I left home a year ago. But this time, it didn't feel cold. I placed my tea down and whispered to myself, is greater than, you told me to get out. I did, and look where it took me. For a moment, I thought about calling them, maybe to thank them for the push. But then I smiled. They didn't deserve even that. True revenge didn't come from words. It came from silence, from walking past them without anger, without fear, without the need to prove anything anymore. As night settled over the city, I turned off the lights and let the darkness fill the house. It didn't scare me. It felt like home. I had everything I needed: peace, freedom, and a future that belonged to no one but me. And in that silence, I finally realized they had taken my room, but I had taken the world. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.